This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the July 2022 Evergreen Cataloging Interest Group meeting. Hi, yes, and I've got a question in the chat to share the Google Docs so that you'll be able to see this. This is our agenda, so let me copy that. And I am putting the agenda in the chat box. There you go. Okay, and as I started to say, I am Jennifer Weston. I am the facilitator of this fine group. In addition to all the members you see listed at the top of the box here, we make up the organizing committee. We're a volunteer group. It's not an exclusive group. Anybody that might want to participate as an organizing committee member, just let me know. We're always excited to take to welcome new volunteers. So that said, you've obviously found the meeting link that's at the top of the agenda. If you are new to this group, let me just put a few reminders out there. This agenda that you have the link to now turns into our official meeting notes. The notes are posted to the wiki, and the link to the wiki is here. It's kind of small, but we'll talk about that again here in a moment. These are usually posted in 24 to 48 hours after our meetings so that they are available. So the recordings are posted. These notes will be posted up as well so that you can have access to these as well as previous meetings. And if you happen to miss a meeting, they are made available for you. I said thanks to the people from the organizing committee that are here. Quite a few of us have joined us today. And let's see, anything else I need to do as a welcoming message? We'll say at this point, this document is made.
Yeah, having multiple things here. Anyway, what can I do for you?
Carolyn, I think you are not muted. We can hear you.
Maybe. hold on.
Yeah, let's see. We're going to turn off your microphones, please, because you all have the ability to do that on your own. And if not, I think I can do it on my side if I need to. Okay, nope, can't hear you. Let me see who else I'm hearing. Thanks, Carolyn. Wasn't you then. And as I am continuing, I wanted to just kind of also talk about this document. The brief agenda is usually listed at the top to kind of give you an overview of what we're doing. And then we have what looks like a very, very full agenda. That's because I try to include as many notes as possible on there so that we have a full record of our meetings. And it's not usually nearly as long as it tends to look like it will be. So we have plenty of content to cover today. And I won't keep belaboring the issue there. I just want to welcome everyone. And let's keep going. Today, we're also going to have a presentation as part of our program. That'll be our first part after I finish my general updates from Pennsylvania Integrated Library Systems. So in a moment, we will welcome the folks that have come to demo what's a really cool process they've started using the custom group polls.
Tom is in Park 1 or Park something.
Okay, I'm going to do Elizabeth. I'm just going around meeting people. Okay, I think I've got everybody muted now. Multitasking on I was going to say on a Monday, but it's not Monday. Here we are. So full agenda. We've talked about welcome and announcements. We've covered that. The wiki is a work in process. I've already talked about that a few times. I like to put the link on here just so that you can see it and get to it easily on our agendas. I added it here because I've started making a few changes to it, changes mostly updates, to be honest. Later this month, I'd like to host a work session. I'm putting that out there because several people have volunteered through the survey we did earlier this year to help with the wiki, so I'll be reaching out to you. If anybody else is interested in that, let me know. I think I'm just going to set aside an hour sometime by the end of the month and just to have time set aside as a work session. So if anybody wants to join me for that, and you have not yet volunteered, please email me. Otherwise, if you have volunteered already, look for an email from me and please don't ignore it. Haha. So again, I hope to have that done so that we get back together in August. We've got a lot of work done on the wiki, primarily because we have a lot of projects going on, and I want us to be able to use the wiki as a good, reliable resource. Also, as part of our welcome and announcements, just a quick reminder that quite a few releases have come out in the last couple of months. 3.9 came out in April, and if you attended the Evergreen conference, you've been privy to a lot of this information, so this is just repeat for you. But 3.9.0 is available. 3.8.1 came out. 3.7.3 came out. Both of those point releases came out in May. So all of that came out before the conference. The tabular release notes are now officially updated with all of the releases that did that at the end of last month. So if you're not familiar with the tabular release notes, it's exactly what they say. There's a tab for each version, 3.7, 3.8, etc., that just kind of summarizes what we're doing there. And then latest releases, we have a page on our wiki that tells you what the latest release is. And there are links to the official documentation and community servers. A note, if you want to use the community server just to see what a new version is going to look like, the official community server now is 3.9.0. And I did want to make a quick note because our Authority Fest was great. I hope you think so. I thought so. I thought it was very productive. We're not going to talk so much about authorities in this meeting. I did say we would talk about it and follow up in the cataloging interest group meeting, but we're going to do that in August. So our next meeting is August 9th, and Mike Rylander has agreed to join us. He's going to answer some of our questions that we had about how the linking happens behind the scenes, what those cron jobs do, and what some of the limitations of those may be, and what we can look forward to for future development as well. So please join us in August to continue our Authority Fest conversation. Today, I just want us to review, kind of get feedback on the Evergreen Conference in general, things you might have learned, things you liked, things you didn't like, and things that we want to pick up, conversations we want to continue. Kind of my hope from this conversation. That said, continuing my few minutes of welcome and announcements, I just wanted to say, as part of our monthly calls, I always like to celebrate something. And this time I'm celebrating the new releases. There's a lot of great stuff in all three of those. And to celebrate the Evergreen Online Conference, which was a time for all of us to come together, and that's always a good thing. And then our Authority Fest, our first annual, well, I shouldn't say annual, but our first Authority Fest. And at the end of the online Evergreen Conference, if you missed this, it was announced that 2023, right now, there's planning in progress for an in-person Evergreen Conference. This one to be hosted by CW Mars in Worcester, Massachusetts. Never sure if I say that correctly. I will be corrected if I didn't. But that'll be in April of next year, so we finally get to come back together in person. Okay, I'm talking quickly so we can get to the meat of the meeting. Here at Catalogers Connect, we just list all of the fellow interest groups and the work that's going on with those. There are links to each one of the interest groups there if you are interested in finding out more about them, the regular meeting schedule, and I've got the notes there about when their next meetings are. DIG has already met this month, so you see that their August note, as has the Outreach Committee. In fact, I think they canceled theirs this month, but they will be meeting again in August. Other than that, the others are already planned for later this month. New devs, I think, meet right after us at 3 o'clock. And then I added just a little community activity that I was aware of. I did pull the interest group meeting notes from the Evergreen Conference because a few of the interest groups, like we did, met during the conference. So I've pulled those notes there for you to have quick, easy access to. Let's see, DIG has announced that they're officially changing their format. Previously, DIG was meeting, I believe, every other month was on IRC, and then the alternating months were video conference. Now they're going to do full video conferences, much like ours, online meeting that is, so they can interact rather than using IRC. Anybody from DIG that want to share more about that, because I missed this month's meeting? I was on vacation. Okay. Hearing nothing, I'll just point you to their wiki pages, so you can find more information there. Outreach Committee, I wanted to share that Outreach Committee, and specifically Rogan Hamby, organizes a hackaway every year. He's put out a survey, and if you're interested in attending, if you would please complete that, it will be online. Hackaway doesn't sound necessarily like it's something for catalogers because it sounds more developer kind of work, but Hackaway also includes documentation efforts. So DIG is a big part of that, and if you wanted to take time during Hackaway just to work with other people, other catalogers, to work on documentation that's needed, this would be a good time for that. It's usually in the fall, so you'll see the date survey there. He's just looking for the best date to host this year. In the times before when they were meeting in person, the places would be different from year to year. But now, since it's online, everybody's welcome to attend. Okay, Launchpad Bugs. This is here as a standing agenda item. I would pull out links specifically if you wanted to see new bugs, cataloging bugs. Staff catalog is kind of the equivalent of the Angular staff catalog when we just talk about that. It has a new bug there. I'm not looking at those specifically this time. I leave them on our agenda to give you, again, easy access, and this is a good time to take, while we're chatting, if you wanted to look through the list of bugs there and see if there's anything specific you wanted to bring to the community to discuss, this is a good time to do that. You can always use the community listserv as well. I did want to take a moment, and this is my last announcement before I hand things over to Elizabeth and Christina for their demo. But the last thing I wanted to talk about is this particular bug, and it's there. Since you have access to this document, anybody can click on that, and I'm going to hop over there. About Angular Holdings Editor. This is a very specific request, and I don't know if Jennifer Pringle is with us today. I'm looking to see. This is one that a bug that she put in place that's about the Holdings Editor doesn't allow you to edit the owning library. And it's in a very specific circumstance. The reason I added it here is Taryn boosted this bug on the listserv last week, I guess. Yeah, last Friday, and asked for input from catalogers. And when I went to review it, it looks like Bill Erickson's made some changes, but he's made some preliminary decisions about how to handle this, and they just want our input. So since we've been asked for input, I would like to provide it. So here is specifically what the bug itself. The Holdings Editor doesn't allow you to edit the owning library. Now, let me see. Christine actually put it in there. Christine Burns posted this one. I looked at Jennifer Pringle's example instead. That's the reason I credited her, but Christine put this one out there for us. And Jennifer Pringle here is in Sitka as well. She gives us this workaround for adding holdings. So let me show you, and Elaine, you can please correct me here if I'm misinterpreting any of this, because I know that you've got a workaround and you don't use add holdings, and then as I'm reading through, I'm trying to scroll slowly. Here are the opportunities, or the possibilities that Bill has put out there. Let me demo what it is that they're asking us to look at. So when they say that the owning library can't be changed, specifically the bug started with, when you click on add holdings, I'm using community demo server, so this is 3.9. Let me make this a little bigger. Okay. When you click on the add holdings button, you can't change this here. That's specifically what they're talking about. Now the scenarios that they're giving us are coming up because this wouldn't affect only when you're adding something new. It would affect when you're editing something as well. So let me back here. So if I were to be editing either from the item table or from the holdings view, if for some reason, and again, there's a better way to do this probably in a workflow, but if for some reason I decided I wanted to change the owning library, we're talking specifically on the call number, not on an individual item, because you can change them on the individual item. But if you were changing the call number, so if I am editing my call number, see this screen looks very much like the screen, the add holdings screen, even though this is the edit screen. He's asking for behavior. What happens if you already have items, copies attached to the call number? What do you want to happen to these? And here are the scenarios we were given. I have them listed on the agenda, and they're also here in the, you can see the conversation between Bill and Galen there in the bug. But here's what's being suggested. And again, we're talking about if you change the owning library on the call number that has items already attached to it. Two scenarios they're saying is if this change circ library when owning library changes, preference is not set. And if you're not on 3.8 yet, you might be wondering, what is this preference? Let me show you where that preference lives. That preference lives, let me go back to my add holdings view here. If I add holdings, it lives here under preferences. It's a new preference that came along with the move to Angular, this whole, move to make it in line. Sorry, I'm talking scroll at the same time. This whole, when it was ported over to Angular in the new format. We got a new setting that allows you to say, these are saved on your workstation. These aren't global. That allows you to say for your cataloging purposes, if you want to change the circ library when the owning library changes. And again, that lives on this preferences tab. So if you're wondering what in the heck that means, it lives here and you can set it yourself. It's not a library it's not a library setting. It's a cataloger setting, cataloging preference. So all this is a long intro just to get feedback, isn't it? So scenario here says, if that is not set, the proposal is then you just ignore the copies and update the call number. So that would mean, let me go back here. Let me look at holdings. That would mean if I change just, you know what, let me go to holdings view again. If I just changed, for example, this call number, if I change the owning library on this call number, do I want the circulation library to change as well? It would change the owning library for all the copies. The question in play here is, do I want to change this, the circuit library? Again, you can change these individually. So this is a very specific workflow that if you decide to change the call number, the owning library on the call number. So what do we want to happen here? Proposal is, if that setting, that preference isn't set, so you haven't said, yes, change the circ library when the owning library changes, then you just ignore the copies completely and only update the call number. So that would mean the owning library changes to, let's say it's changing to BR1, these are examples, but your circ library would stay the same. Following that, and in addition to, these two kind of go together, if that preference is set, then you update the circ library on the copy selected. So these would go both of these things. He's proposing both of these. Or I think Galen actually said these are the two we should use. Whoever proposed them. This is what we're saying. So if that setting is set that you want to change circ when you change the owning, then both the circ and the owning libraries would change if you changed the call number level. That's a lot for me to say and a lot of intro. So I'm going to stop talking to see if there are questions and any feedback on that proposal.
This is Elaine. I would think that if you changed it at the call number level, that meant you wanted all of those items tax changed.
I agree.
So I would just say to change all of them. If you only want, one or two of those items changed, then you're going to pick the items.
I'm nodding my head, but I want to give everybody a chance to talk. I agree.
Yeah.
I'm glad we were asked our opinion on this because I'm not sure this is a workflow we would normally be following. I mean, if you're just moving one or two of these, you would transfer them, right? But if you wanted to, I mean, that's what I kept thinking, why would I need to go through all of this? But the reality is that it is possible. And if it is possible to just click on that, it's nice to say, well, what do you want to happen if this happens?
Yeah, because initially you always had to transfer. But sorry.
I'm just glad you brought it up, Jennifer, because I saw that email and I went and looked at the bug and was like, I don't have the time to figure out what this means. So now that you explained it so succinctly, I understand. And my suggestion would definitely be that everything gets changed. If you're changing the call number level, then I think it's safe to assume that you want everything in that call number changed. Because like Elaine said, if you didn't, then you would just choose one item.
Sure. I agree completely, but I certainly wasn't going to put that in the bug without bringing it to everybody. So thank you for entertaining me today. And this is the kind of forum that I'm glad we have. So when that comes up in a bug, we can talk about it. So we kind of agreed that, I mean, it doesn't just mean change owning library. If I'm changing it's owning and circ library is what we would prefer. Whether or not that setting is in place. My thought also on this, and then I'll move on, is that this isn't going to be set by default. This is something that we're going to have to, as libraries upgrade to 3.8 or after 3.8 or 3.9, this is not set by default. So if it's not set by default, then you're just kind of stuck with, okay, it's not changing my circ library, my owning library. Okay. So trying to distinguish between those two things, I think gets a little tricky, especially when people aren't using this yet.
I think that's a good point because a lot of people probably are just not even going to look at those preferences, honestly.
Yeah.
And
I can agree with that. I don't think I've ever noticed that preference before, so this is interesting to learn.
Yeah. Well, it is new, but I think that I think the assumption should be on that call number level that you want all items attached to that. And if that's the incorrect assumption, then somebody's going to have to go back. Then they did it wrong.
Right. Exactly.
I mean that. So there's a lot of places where, I mean, if you pick the wrong thing to transfer, oops, you transferred everything instead of just that one item. So, yeah.
And I see Darcy's note, and we like this preference very much. Darcy says, I think the preference was something that King County asked for. They're not a consortium. They always wanted owning and circ library to match. And I think you'll find that a lot of libraries want their owning and circ to match. So thank you very much, Darcy. I think that's going to be a very helpful setting.
Yeah, this is a really old, this is when we first started developing Evergreen, we had a number of libraries who had what they called a deposit collection, not to be confused with items requiring a deposit. But they would take, say, a group of DVDs and send it amongst all of their branches for a set period of time to circulate from there. But the owning library always, the headquarters library always owned it. And they wanted that owning library to always be the headquarters library so that they could identify them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a library left in Pines that does that anymore.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a relic.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. And it's not the same as a floating collection. People think of it as a floating collection,
Mm-hmm.
but it stays at that circle library. So it gets checked out and then returned and checked out.
Mm-hmm.
Rotating collection, that's what some probably, yeah, we called them deposit collections for some unknown reason.
Yeah, we had those, and again, I know we've got more of a program here. I won't talk. But we had those. We had like these small boys and girls school. We would take small collections there, and they would just live there to check in and check out for a while. Okay, and I'm going to watch this floating conversation here in the chat that's going on. I don't think, just as a similar, just to give a kind of high profile answer to that, I don't think this affects floating collections really. I mean, you got the options to change your circle library and owning library. This bug is about a very specific scenario where you want to change the owning library on the call number. And that's, you know, again, I'm not sure that happens very often. Question came about because we're looking at libraries that use that same screen to add holdings. And again, why would you do that? Is actually not a bad idea. It's just a different, if it works the way you want it to. So when we go to add holdings, this is where it came about. You wanted to be able to change this owning library so you wouldn't have to necessarily use the holdings view, which is what we all do now, if you needed to add for multiple libraries. So anyway, so that's where that came about. And I am going to leave that there. If anybody has any more questions about how this works, please feel free to continue the conversation on the listserv. For now, I will put in the bug what our thoughts are, and I will let Bill and Galen know as well. So thank you for taking on this topic today. And I see Misty's comment in the chat. Meeting recordings are sent out. They're posted to the wiki. I'll try to remember. I failed in months past, but to send a note to the listserv to let you know when the recordings are up there. But you can usually check the wiki by the end of the week. I'll have them up within a day or two. But like I said, I'll make myself a note to send out a note to the listserv when it's ready. Okay. At that point, let me do a very brief introduction. This demo came about because the Evergreen Conference, we had a great conversation that Elaine led, our annual cataloging interest group meeting. And one of the suggestions that came about out of our conversation, we talked about how would people use group hold since it's a relatively new feature. And Elizabeth shared a little bit about what Lackawanna is doing. So Elizabeth Davis is with us as the support and project management specialist at PALS, which is the Pennsylvania Consortium. And I believe Christina Thomas is here with us from Scranton Public Library, which is part of Lackawanna County. So at this point, can I just turn things over to you, Elizabeth?
Sure.
Let me see if
I will
can
actually.
Okay, go ahead.
I will actually leave it to Tina. She's the head on this, and it was her idea, so I want to give her all the credit.
Well, when you see that, you're going to love it. So thank you in advance, Christina, or Tina. I guess I should call you Tina. Okay, I'm going to make you the presenter so that you can share.
Excellent. You can hear me okay, right?
Yes.
Just to make sure. I never trust myself with technology.
You're great.
When we migrated, and this is something we actually had in a previous ILS, was patrons were able to kind of select their favorite authors, and as soon as one of their titles were added to the catalog, they would automatically be placed on hold for it. But when we migrated over to Evergreen, and funny thing was that not many people used it in our old system, so I don't think they missed it. So when we migrated over, it was always something I'm like, oh, I wish we could, we could do that. So in the holds group, we upgraded and had the holds group. I thought, well, let's try this and just see if we have more interest than we did in the past. So thanks to Elizabeth, when she worked with us here at Scranton, she helped us get it on our website. So I think I can share my screen, right? Oh, wrong screen.
No, that's the right one.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see. Okay. My monitors are mixed up here. So Elizabeth added to our website a form that patrons can fill out, and we just ask basic information, their first name, last name, library card, phone number, and email address. And then we also ask them to select their format, so if they want a regular print, large print, or an audiobook. And then we selected, right now we're at 20 authors that we have available for people to select from. And we try to pick authors from different genres. So we have some mystery, some sci-fi, and just regular fiction. So we went with all of the bestsellers because we knew if we put something up there that wasn't quite a bestseller, that the interest wouldn't be there. So they just fill this out, and we get an email to our reader service staff, and they will go through and add patrons to a holds group. And I'll show you our holds groups here. So what we did was we created a group for each one of our authors, and we have the different genres broken down. So we have the large print, we have playaway, and then we have regular print, and also talking about, because we do still have patrons that really like the CD version of audiobooks. So we included all of those on as an option, and we have one for each one of our different patrons. So I believe we have like 60 some different holds groups. And what happens is we add the patron to whichever author and whichever format they want, and then we will daily get an emailed report to us from Evergreen that lists any new items that were added to the catalog that would then be our authors that we have selected. So our staff, it is staff involved, so staff do have to go in and manually add to each of the new titles to the list here, but it's working great. It does have a little bit of time-consuming work. It takes them probably 15 to 20 minutes a day, which isn't much, but still, when they're trying to do this while they're doing public service, it can be a little time-consuming. And they'll go in and just place holds, and our patrons are really liking it. We have it just linked right onto the main. The form is linked right onto the main part of our website, and every so often we'll have somebody come in with a request, and only once have we had somebody want to be off because they were tired of getting all of James Patterson's books. So, and we all know that he has a new book every month, so that's the only time we've had a complaint about it, but patrons seem to like it. The staff are liking it. We're looking at different ways to kind of make it a little bit smoother, because we do have a group of staff that work on it. So whoever's here first thing in the morning, they're the ones that work on that list, and they the staff coming in later need to know that they've done the list already. But Elizabeth, am I forgetting anything? I mean, it's just like become such a part of our routine anymore.
No, I think that's kind of everything. Like you said, the report goes out daily, and staff can just review it. You use the report for other things too, so it's not just this one project. But I think it's fun. I like it. I thought it was real fun.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. It seems like everybody didn't use it in our old system, but then once we put it out there in social media and on our website, we had a nice interest. And I'd say we probably have about 30 patrons or so that use it, but we do need to expand our list of authors. So, Elizabeth, can you share the basics of the report?
Yeah, the report is basically just title, author, maybe TCN, of items that were added to the catalog yesterday. So the create date would be yesterday. And then it would just be, I think they do it by owning library, because they're in a larger consortium, and then a system in and of itself as well. So I think we filter it down to just the libraries that they can get holds from. So
one thing we did do, and it just thought of this, we did create a separate, just one login, since there's multiple staff working on it. We created one login that when they're doing their holds groups, they just log in into the system as this kind of generic user, so that they can go in and do all of the requests.
Yes, they do use on order records, especially for those big titles or big authors.
Does anybody have any other questions?
Does this work well if you order through acquisitions? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it does. Yep. Of course, if we use the patron request for, it's a patron request it, we automatically have them get the hold first. So, but the next day we get the report, and anybody that's on our list will get added to the title that's added.
And with the holds group, you do have the option of doing a randomized list for your holds, like, or if you do it in the sequential order in which they were added to the group. So
I do believe we keep ours randomized, so it's never the same people all the time.
I think
Hi, this is Elizabeth. This is Elizabeth from Noble, and we have a couple of libraries that are using this, not to the extent that you're using it. They have several authors, but nothing like this list. One of the things that they want is a setting that, I'm not going to say this right. It's not honoring the setting to make the holds be picked up at that library. So if the patron has configured that they want their holds picked up at a different library, that it wants to send them to a different library, the books, and they view this as a service of the Linfield Public Library, that they want the patrons to, come pick them up there. They're trying to get their own patrons, even though some of them, technically live somewhere else. The other thing is we're having trouble using it for things like reading groups, where you can't see when patrons added themselves to a list or were added to a list, and they often want to, they've sent it out to everybody who was on the group, but they want to send a second hold event for people who were added to the group after a certain date. So they want to go select just that batch of patrons and do that. And the last thing they want to do is be able to exclude, basically they want a checklist like this of the patrons and be able to exclude a few patrons who don't want the next book by this author and have already told you that. But other than that, they're really enjoying. They were doing this manually before, and so having it place all the holds and randomize them has become very popular.
Yeah, we don't have. I don't think any of our libraries in Lackawanna County are using it for any of their book groups. We are federated systems, so we do share amongst all of our libraries. So their home library is where they'll get it, even though we have it mostly on our Scranton Public website, but it is shared with anybody from the county. We don't, keep anybody from not doing it. Mm-hmm. So it's. I know our patrons are liking it. So.
I'm just looking at some of the questions. Tina, would you tailor this to work at a different branch in your system, say like Abington or Taylor? For example, if you order multiple copies of bestsellers, can each branch create their own holds groups?
They can within, but if just like earlier, if say I wanted to do this at another library, but my home library is this building, my request will come here. So because of the way our system works, probably, I mean, Abington, one of the other libraries can do it maybe for their book group or something, as long as their home library is selected to be that library, if that makes sense. So Elizabeth, do you have anything else that you want to share? Because I really, I think we covered everything. It's very easy as long as, you know, once you know how to use the holds group, it's pretty easy. And then set up on your website a form for people to fill out, and of course push out via social media and email blasts.
Yeah, no, I was just looking at the questions, but I think we got them all.
Okay.
And Lindsay did share that in 3.8 there's a new setting that will override the patron's default pickup library. So the hold place or the requesting library will be the pickup library. So that will kind of work with that. So and then the only thing is when you're putting the hold on for the group hold, you have to have the TCN of the item. That's the only bummer. So, but yeah, I think we covered everything.
Excellent.
Well, thank you both so very much for sharing this kind of creative way you're using group holds and letting your patrons request through this fabulous form. So you've made it very easy for them. And while it takes a little extra time on the staff, I know that your patrons are loving it.
Yeah.
This is fabulous. So thank you both very much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
I think I can take back control there. Okay, are you all now seeing my screen again?
Yep.
Yep, fabulous. Okay, and I did put the link to the form that's on the Lackawanna website in the chat. So if people are interested in seeing what that looks like. So again, thank you so very much. And again, that came out of our conversation at the conference, which is a nice leadway into the conference. Looks like we've got about 20 minutes to talk about conference review now. I feel like we could talk a lot longer about group holds. Maybe we'll pick up time to do that in the future. I don't plan to go through all the material that's here. One of the things I wanted to say is that if you were able to attend the conference, thank you for being there. I should have said early on, I wanted to thank, just kind of in absentia, the people that put together the conference and people that presented. Quite a few of the people that are here today that are frequent contributors to the cataloging interest group, and even organizing committee members were part of the group of presenters. So thank you all for making it a success this year. If you were not able to attend the conference, never fear. There is material available, so you can review much of the conference on your own time. I do want to encourage those that did attend the conference to complete the survey. It's open for responses through the end of this week, I believe. It was extended, so please provide feedback, primarily on things that you would like to see presented on in the future. And you can be as specific as you want to about kind of cataloging things, is what I'm going to obviously advocate for, that you'd like to see talked about at future conferences. And then those survey results are shared with the next conference so that they can help kind of promote the kinds of topics they'd like to see when the call for proposals go out. They can provide a list of here are the things we're looking for. And of course, we'll use them too as an interest group. I'm looking at the time we have here. I did want to also just let you all know that the presentation slides and session notes are available. All those that have been submitted to the conference planning committee, all the slides and session notes have been posted to the program descriptions page. So there's a link there to the conference website and specifically to the page where they live. Videos will be posted on that very same page. Those are coming soon, and I imagine a message will go out to the general listserv to let you know. I see Tina's note that she's leaving. Thank you again for being here. You're welcome back anytime. Thank you. So I was saying that videos will be posted from the conference presentations. So when those are available, we'll let you know. And I shared links to the cataloging interest group projects or sessions during the conference. So those are there for the annual meeting notes. That highlights a couple of things we talked about during that meeting were item buckets, how they were being used, kind of things that we could see that we'd like them. Future development, we'd like to, kind of some wish list ideas about how we could use item buckets. And I think we captured everything. They're there. You'll see that I haven't refined the notes at all. They are just as we were talking. Then also we talked quite a bit about monograph parts and kind of how we would like to see those work, and in a little different method, and how we're using them now. So there's actually some good feedback on how people are using parts as well, and some links to various different consortia and how they're using parts and their controlled vocabularies. So check out those annual meeting notes if you haven't already. I am introducing all this material, and then I am going to pause and then ask you for your feedback. So very quickly, another minute here. Authority Fest, we talked about, we'll cover in August, but I did want to make the slides and notes available from Authority Fest. I can't wait to pick that conversation back up in August, really, because we've really got some good momentum there and we don't want to lose it. And then a couple of things I just wanted to bring out for review, things that I'd like to continue to make available to this community is the session that Ruth Frazier, who I think is here with us. Hi, Ruth. And Andrea Bunce-Nyman did for us during the conference. They're what has now become an annual tradition of their new feature highlights for 3.8 and 3.9. And it's always a lot of fun and very informative, and especially this one because there's so many cool new features in 3.8 and 3.9. So please check that out if you haven't already. And everybody say hello to Ruth in the chat. Thank you, Ruth and Andrea, for putting this together for us yet again. So very helpful. And then there was a session that I did with Rogan Hamby, my colleague here at Equinox. We kind of talked about imagining the future of collection development, and not just collection development, but kind of a cataloging dashboard sort of thing. It turned into what we would, a wish list for what we would want from a cataloging dashboard. I'm going to leave these notes and slides here for you. One of the things we said we're going to do is bring this back to this group, which we will do after we've done a little refining. And again, they're just kind of the rough notes that we took as we were talking. For those of you that were there, thank you very much, those that helped me take notes during that session, because there's so much really, really good input. So our goal is to turn this into something actionable, start with some wish list, Launchpad bugs, and then really expand involvement beyond this group. So we will look at doing this later in the fall. And again, I didn't want this to fall off of the radar either, especially if you weren't able to attend that session or attend the conference. I wanted to make sure we shared that because there's some really cool ideas on that notes page. When we started talking about things we'd like to see, when you kind of say, just think big, what do you want? We've got some really big ideas as a community that we want to be able to harness and share. So again, that'll come up in a future program.
I just wanted to comment about that, Jennifer, because I went to the collection development thing that you and Rogan did, and it was just like this open forum, and I was like, are we really going to be able to talk for this amount of time? And the brainstorming that came out of that was so fantastic, and I just loved that we just opened up the floor and the conversation really got started, and it was great.
Thanks, Kate. We felt the same way. Rogan and I we were planning, we're like, oh, do we have something to talk about if it's really quiet? Like, we didn't need to talk at all. So thank you. It really was a great conversation. So again, if you haven't had a chance to read those notes, please do. And we will bring it back. I mean, it's one of the things we talked about. Kenny's wanted to make sure that this wasn't just a one-time conversation. It was something that we would continue on. So we'll do that September or October, if we don't do it as a special session outside of this. Okay, so we have about 15 minutes to get your feedback, things that you liked, things that you perhaps would like to see a little differently next time. Things you learned, things you want to talk about as a community you want to talk more about. So I'm quiet now. I'll watch chat though. And feel free to turn on your microphones if you have them. Okay, so I will just ask, were you inspired by anything you saw that you wanted to bring back to this group and say, hey, there are things we should really be talking about during our monthly meetings? That's the first thing. Second thing is, did you feel like there was enough content there for you as a cataloging group?
Well, I will open my mouth again.
Please.
And, this plug for Authority Fest. I mean, it was incredible. And it was, how long was it? 2 hours?
It's 2 hours. Mm-hmm.
Okay. It easily could have been 4 hours because it seemed like the last 20 minutes was finally, we had such good conversation for the first, hour and a half. And we finally got into some nitty gritty with authorities in the last 20 minutes. And we could have gone for a lot longer. And I think that authorities is something that a lot of us don't necessarily have the greatest grasp on when it comes to Evergreen. We know how they're supposed to work in general, but like me personally, I don't know exactly how they're working in Evergreen. And I think that authorities should be something that we try to touch on as often as possible.
And I believe there was even a suggestion that we do this on an annual basis as part of the conference, that we have this kind of extended conversation about authorities. So even out, I want to have the conversation before next year's conference, but I certainly want to make sure that we continue that. So thanks.
And I know one of the major themes that came out of that as well, that could have been its own thing, was we did talk a lot about regex and how a lot of us would like to learn a little more how to utilize that to its full capacity. Most of us would use MarcEdit, but we could really streamline some stuff that we do using regex if we knew how to do it better.
I'd forgotten that. Thanks. Yes, we'll capture that. Reading Lindsay's note, interested in exploring long-range options possibilities for getting away from MARC and towards RDA linked data for bib records. Yeah.
We're going to have to talk about BibFrame at some point.
We are.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to say boo hiss.
Yeah,
Well,
me too.
Yeah, and my eyes twitching, but no cameras. You can't see that.
Would it be worthwhile to see if we could get somebody from the Library of Congress to do a presentation on it for us?
Mm-hmm. Doesn't hurt to ask, right?
Yeah.
Right. And if it's online, it might not cost us anything.
Yeah, I'll investigate. I know that there's some just general training out there, but yeah, see what it really means. I mean, yeah. And, and it is a conversation too. I mean, I see all your notes there too. It's a game of chicken between Library of Congress and OCLC. Yes, that's very, very true. Not sure what we have about moving away MARC. There's also the fact that for RDA, you can keep MARC and do RDA, but BibFrame is a different animal. Yeah. Maybe that's just kind of we have a little fest to talk about these things, get a little bit of training and a little bit of how can Evergreen handle it within the structure it is. It's MARC based, and BibFrame's about linked data, and I'm not sure those two are necessarily incompatible, but that might be me being naive, but yeah, it's something we can't ignore. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, and I think if we could get somebody from the Library of Congress to just give us a real brief, this is what it is kind of thing, that would help inform us what we need to ask of developers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I can't type and think at the same time, so I have a suggestion. I'll explore. Speaking of exploring, one of the things we did talk about, which is possible, is getting Terry Reese to do a MarcEdit training for us on a more positive note. But not that RDA and BibFrame's not positive, I didn't mean to suggest that, but on Anna. So let me just check that. So MarcEdit training with Terry Reese. Because so many of us use MarcEdit and it has tons of capabilities. Okay, I wrote down BibFrame and RDA. Anything else we wanted to we think that as a community we should be talking about, and the conference is a good place to do it? I know that there's so much to unpack from all of these materials. As I was going back through them getting ready for today, I thought, oh my goodness, we did talk about a lot of things at this year's conference, which is, a very pleasant surprise. I know that going in, we thought, it's online again, it's hard to get us all together and have kind of productive conversations, but my goodness, just going back through our notes, there's a lot there. Which is one of the reasons I want to work on the wiki, is I want to make sure that we kind of collect all of this and it doesn't just live in these Google Notes documents. We make them living thing. I will just add, well, again, I'll watch chat there. Speaking of, go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi, this is Mackenzie at EPEI. I just want to offer my perspective of the conference this summer too. Only attended Authority Fest. First, I want to second everything that Kate said, because yes, Authority Fest was amazing. But I didn't attend the rest of the conference, in part because when I was looking at the schedule, I did not feel that there was enough cataloging related things that I felt warranted
Mhm.
at that point. So just to offer my perspective there, I was like, there need to be more cataloging things. I don't know what in particular, because there's so much that I'm wanting to have discussed. I'm sort of, if it's cataloging related, I'm there, but that's my 2 cents on it. As someone who was only at Authority Fest and really enjoyed Authority Fest, but didn't end up going to the rest of the conference before that.
Blogging content was a little thin this year. I've attended the conference for the last 5 years now, and this certainly, I believe this was probably the thinnest on cataloging that it's been in my time of going. So I encourage everybody to keep looking at the schedule every year, because we're definitely trying to bring stuff, cataloging content, because as we all know as catalogers, unless it's specifically a cataloging workshop or something, technical services and cataloging is generally under represented at conferences. But historically speaking, an Evergreen conference is not one of those conferences. There's usually a lot of cataloging content.
I would agree. I think those are fair assessments. I agree with Kate. I mean, I don't even remember the first one. It's been so long ago, but yeah, it was rather thin this year. I know that, that I don't remember if we had this conversation in May when we were looking at our last May schedule. We said, to start looking at the schedule. I think as a cataloging community, one of the things we can do is to start, we know that April is our next conference, so that we can start November, December, start talking about the kinds of things we'd like to see presented on, and then lining up people to do those presentations. So we can kind of put what we want out there and have a big influence over what that conference looks like next time, especially since we're going to be in person. Because as Mackenzie makes the point, it's got to be worth your while. And if it's not worth, if this year being online was then, you think about the cost of having to travel. So we want to make sure that it's absolutely worth bringing catalogers together, and that you can justify to your funders, whoever's paying for you to come, that there's really significant content. And I think as a community, we can make that one of our priorities, especially by the end of this year, and stay in close contact with that organizing committee to see when the call for proposals is going out, to make sure that we propose lots of really good stuff. It means
And I
coming
know
together.
in the past, proposals have come straight from ideas that we've talked about in these meetings.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Maybe we even add a place on the wiki that we start collecting the ideas too, so that we don't just have a conversation and go, I don't know, what do you want to present on this year? And then of course you just get that blank face, even though we've talked about so many great things. I'm guilty of that myself. So I'm making myself a note there too, to start talking about conference ideas. Because it doesn't just land with the organizing committee. Anybody can submit an idea.
Trisha had a good idea in the chat, Jennifer. She says, reports. Is there any interest in learning cataloging specific reports? And there was a lot of support for that.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I believe Rogan would be very interested in. And I'm not going to, volunteer him, but we've talked about something very specific to cataloging reports in the past. So yeah, we'll add that. And I'm sorry, thank you for that, Kate. I wasn't scrolling through the chat, I missed it. So yeah, let's add that. I'm gonna get everything in our notes. Reports for catalogers.
I really liked Kate's presentation because it showed how important cataloging is for everyone and not just the catalogers. So
Oh yes.
I think that, you can get more people excited about cataloging by showing how it impacts everything in Evergreen.
Yeah, with the pandemic in the past, some of us had to go through a period where we kind of had to justify, the necessity for technical services. So that's kind of what I had in the background of my mind when I wrote that presentation, that cataloging affects every position in a library, whether you want to believe it or not.
So
Yes.
very true.
So I think if you skew a few of the cataloging presentations kind of in that direction, you might get more people to come too.
Yeah. It's a great point.
I think that would be a good standing session, even if it turned into a panel discussion of some or multiple presentations. So Kate wouldn't have to do it all on her own every year.
I hadn't thought of that. That's a great idea.
I really like that. Much like, again, Ruth, thank you very much. But Ruth and Andrea and Taryn kind of rotate the responsibilities of doing the Launchpad. I'm leaving somebody else. I'm sorry, whomever I'm leaving out. Thank you too. But Launchpad is always a standing session, and I think this would be an equally valuable one to have. Great idea. And if you're not familiar with Launchpad, I know that I just became guilty again of talking about Launchpad bugs without any kind of introduction, but there are some really, there was a great presentation at this year's conference as well, and I invite you to check that out on using Launchpad. Ruth, we've had a basic cataloging course today in Evergreen, Indiana for copy catalogers. And a big part of that training is a reminder that cataloging is integral to functioning libraries. Absolutely. Modern libraries do not function at all without cataloging. Try searching if you don't have good cataloging. That's all I'm saying. Okay, well, I think we're almost at time. We have a couple of minutes. I think I started to say how I did that these were just cataloging projects down here. The reason they're on the agenda is for that reason, so they don't get lost. But they're here. These are things that we want to make sure we talk about. So our fall is pretty big. We're going to continue talking about authorities. We're going to come back to that conversation that we had, the whole brainstorming session that Rogan and I did. And we've got a few kind of marching orders here, things that we talked about for the conference. I think we can also kind of talk about internally with our working group instead of, we won't just put a pin in those till next year. We'll see if we can't explore bringing in some other people to do some training for us. Anything else we want added to our list for posterity before we break up today? As usual, I am going to stop the recording, but I'll hang around for a few minutes afterwards if anybody has any questions they want to talk about. Our next meeting is Tuesday, August the 9th. Make sure I got that right. Yep, Tuesday, August the 9th. It will be about authorities. So if you enjoyed Authority Fest, come on back for more. And I think that that's all I have. These notes, again, are updated already. That was real time. And when I get the recording available, I'll post that to the listserv. If anybody has anything they want to share from the conference, please continue to send your notes to the listserv as well to keep our conversations going. Thank you all so very much for being here today. Special thanks to Elizabeth and Tina, who's left already, for demoing their procedures today. Best wishes to all. See you next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.